What it do? Welcome to another new episode of Locked On Bucks. Tonight, the best team in the West came to Milwaukee and they left with a 25-point L. That is what you like to hear as a fan of the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks defeated the Thunder 118-93. Was this the most impressive win of the season? Plus, the Big Three hit the court again after some time apart through the injuries. We're going to talk about it all on today's episode of Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, and you can catch me weekly on the Technical Foul Podcast, the Pack-A-Day Podcast, and during the NFL season, you can catch me on Cheesehead TV's Carry the G and MKE. Joining me is Frank Madden, longtime voice of the pod and the founder of BrewHoop.com. We appreciate you for tuning in, and we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. As mentioned, Frank, the number one team in the West came in. The Thunder came in. They were coming in with some good energy. They were 14-3 coming into this game, 8-2 over their last 10 games. They got dominated by the Bucks. It was close in the first half, but the Bucks broke it open in the third and continued to let it roll throughout the fourth quarter. Honestly, from beginning to end, offense and defense, even though the three ball wasn't falling for the Bucks early on, offensively, they were connected. They were getting good looks. Defensively, they were on a string. Was this the most impressive win of the season for the Bucks?
It's funny that I feel like the Celtics game in Milwaukee, it's going to be hard to ever top that one just because, you literally like bludgeon the Celtics into just giving up at halftime, right? And obviously, you can say, well, but Celtics, they're on a back-to-back, but even so, I think there's a short list of most impressive games. I think obviously that Boston win, I think the Denver win, which, unfortunately got kind of obscured by the fact that then they went back and lost the next night against the Heat unimpressively and then against the Grizzlies. So that kind of game got lost a little bit to history. But that was a really impressive win against a Nuggets team that, what was it? Like KCP was coming off an injury and Jamal Murray, wasn't quite right. But again, I thought they were awesome in that game. But I don't know what excuses there are. Camille, you tell me. I watched this game on DVR, so I wasn't following on Twitter if there were any kind of built-in excuses for the Thunder.
Nope.
I just thought defensively, if this wasn't the most impressive win overall, I think it was one of the most, certainly one of the most impressive defensive performances. And,
Absolutely.
Obviously so much of this game, ultimately came down to that third quarter. Bucks win that quarter 34-17. And it's funny, I was just rewatching it, and the Bucks didn't score for the first over 2.5 minutes, or basically roughly 2.5 minutes of the quarter either. And so they went in with, a 1-point lead or whatever at halftime. And then they had a really hard time getting started in the third quarter as well. But just, I felt in the first half, it felt like you could really feel the speed and versatility of the Thunder defense, like the way that they were closing out. Really just kind of popped. Like they just closed out, did not give up open threes the way that you're used to teams, giving up against a team like the Bucks that have the sort of weapons that they have. And so it was interesting because in the third quarter, it felt almost like the Bucks, saw that and raised them and said, okay, whatever the poker metaphor is here, Camille, I'm not a poker player. But it was almost like, they kind of were inspired to try to take that defense to another level to try to match what the Thunder were doing. And what the Thunder go at least 0 for 9 to start the third quarter. They got a couple free throws from Chet Holmgren, but just a few different sequences that I thought were really impressive. Just, coaches love talking about multiple efforts. That was a multiple efforts quarter game, however you want to frame it, from the Bucks. And I think, Brook Lopez, I thought was huge at the start of that third quarter. Only got credited with one block. It was on Chet Holmgren when he had a putback attempt, blocked that. That was after couple of other stops. We saw him challenge a play. And then eventually Khris Middleton actually blocked a shot around the basket. And then, the kind of play that it's hard to pick one play that like kind of capped everything off, but Malik Beasley getting a strip, like 30 feet out, dives to the floor and not just saves it, but I mean, he slid out of bounds like a millisecond after he basically pulled the ball back.
Mm-hmm.
Brooke Lopez, meanders over, picks it up and fires a great outlet pass to Giannis with a head of steam. He finishes the and one on Kenrich Williams. And I can't remember if that gave the Bucks, a 17-point lead or exactly how much it stretched the lead out. But, again, it took a little while for the Bucks offense to really start to get going in the third quarter. And, you look at the box score, it's like, Dame going 4 out of 12, right? For Dame to go 4 out of 12. And then, Khris, right, got his triple double with a late jumper. But he only had 11 points on 11 shots. So it's not like his shooting was there. His playmaking, obviously, with 10 assists was impressive. And then he had 3 alley-oops to Giannis on the night. So those guys were back doing what they're used to doing. But, overall, I think, again, as much as the offense eventually came around and the ball movement by the Bucks, really started to fizz in that third quarter. Again, I think this was more about the defense than the offense. But hey, why choose just one, Camille, on a night like this? The upside was that both sides of the ball were clicking, especially in the third quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about most impressive wins, you named the two I was thinking of. The Boston one was so satisfying because made them pass the sticks, and they really did because they just put the whole bench in. They were like, we're done. So like super satisfying win there. I thought the Clippers win without Giannis was a good win for the Bucks this season. And the one that they had against the Timberwolves in Minnesota, where I was like, this is a solid win. But to your point, tonight's defensive effort was phenomenal. I think this was probably the best defensive game that we saw from them because it felt like they actually put together a full game of good defensive pressure, good connectivity, and thinking about just how they came out and they guarded SGA. Like, we know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he is nice. MVP consideration. He's been above Giannis in the leaderboard for most of the season. The Bucks were able to hold him to 12 points tonight when he averages nearly 31 a game. I saw our friend Justin Garcia, Locked On Bucks. He tweeted out after the game that SGA leads the NBA with 50 30-point games this season. His 12 tonight was his second lowest scoring output this season and the first time he's been held below 20 points since January 16th. In addition to the defense on SGA, the Bucks had the size to really bother Chet as well with Giannis and with Brooke and even with Bobby. And the Bucks game plan against Chet, against SGA, it was executed beautifully because, like you said, the offense, it was on the struggle bus for good portions of the night tonight. Luckily, Giannis was on the game and he was looking a lot more like himself. He was able to really keep it steady for the Bucks throughout the game. And we're going to talk a lot more about Giannis, Khris, and Dame coming up in the next segment because the big three was back on the court. And these are valuable reps for them to continue to get in this game. So we'll talk a little bit more about their performance right after this. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on that 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. The offer is good through April 30th, so get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into power, speed, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what it is you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. We appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Bucks. A special shout out goes out to all of the everydayers who make sure they tune in Monday through Friday every day, hence the name, of course. So what you get from Locked On Bucks is that local expert opinion on the game. And you might want a little bit more of that in just your overall sports viewing, ecosystem. So if you're watching Fox Sports or you're watching ESPN all day and you have to turn the volume down with all the shouting, make sure you make that switch over to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. So head over to YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app and check out Locked On Sports Today, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Big Three is back. They need their reps here. Coming into the game, I saw this in an article from the Journal Sentinel. The trio of Giannis, Khris Middleton, and Damian Lillard have not played together since February 3rd in Dallas. And on the year, they've played a total of 653 minutes in 37 games together. 10th most minutes of any three-man lineup Milwaukee's had this season. But since Doc has taken over, they've only played 71 of those minutes together, of course, heading into tonight, which is the 45th most minutes of any three-man lineup the Milwaukee's had since Doc has taken over for this team. We've had the conversations about Giannis and Dame needing to get their chemistry together and their pick and roll, so on and so forth, but it's important for the entire Big Three, Khris, Giannis, and Dame, to get used to playing with one another under what Doc Rivers wants this team to execute. And tonight, we mentioned it already, the shooting was a little bit difficult for Middleton and for Lillard tonight, but they were playing some good defense. Middleton was really, really good with the ball, with the assist, second triple-double of his career. And as we mentioned, Giannis dominant tonight, 30 points, 19 rebounds, season high in rebounding for him tonight, season high in offensive rebounding for him tonight, 4 assists, just consistent throughout the game. And he just played really big. It was looking like the Thunder, we knew they're a smaller team. They don't rebound super well, but Giannis really made his size an advantage over the Thunder tonight and helped lead the way for the Big Three on the scoring end, while all three of them I felt were really connected defensively and all had big contributions to the Bucks getting a win tonight.
Yeah, let's start with Giannis, right? I think there have been a lot of games, especially the last one, where it's felt like physically it's not the full Giannis experience, right? It's felt like the burst isn't fully there. Thinking back, especially the Golden State game kind of jumps out. He's had a few games here and there. Like the Sacramento game, I thought he actually looked pretty bouncy in that game. But certainly the last game, kind of weird combination of not looking bouncy, looking pretty gassed in the second half against the Nets. Fortunately, they were able to come away with a pretty necessary win, all things told. Game they had to win, and they eventually got it, but more due to Dame, we'll talk about in a second. But I thought he looked really good tonight. I counted 3 alley-oops from Khris Middleton, which was awesome to see. Again, just like those guys just can again not see each other for a year and just roll out of bed and start throwing each other alley-oops, right? It's just kind of how Khris throws to Giannis. I don't think Giannis is going to throw many to
not
Khris.
Anymore. No.
No. So yeah, they had a couple nice. They had a couple opportunities with kind of the double drag screens. Giannis got lost, finished one early, And then, I mean, kind of the punctuation mark of the game, Khris's 10th assist, Giannis's 29th and 30th points, just that side pick and roll action, Giannis rolling, Khris just putting it up there perfect for him. And Giannis went up top of the square and put
Yes.
it down. And Camille was just a clean dunk too. It was just like
Over
straight.
2.
It was over 2 dudes, just threw it down straight through the basket. As someone who appreciates dunks, I know you appreciate dunks. The way the ball goes through the basket is an essential part of any dunk. And that one was an extremely satisfying one. And it felt like it was, a game where Giannis had a little bit more of his burst. Again, something obviously we're going to keep an eye on here, working towards the playoffs, just because you need Giannis at his best. Fortunately, no back-to-backs in the playoffs. But it seemed like those couple days off since the last game served him well. And again, you just kind of cross your fingers that he continues to feel good, and that I think I pronounced it like completely wrong. I think it's tendinopathy, the hamstring tendinopathy, I think is how it's pronounced.
I'll take your word for it.
Whatever is going on with Giannis's hamstrings today, obviously he looked pretty good. And he had that really nice early dunk on, I think it was Giddey. I was hoping it was Chet, different white guy. I think it was on Giddey where he got an offensive rebound. I think it might have been his first offensive rebound. He just went right back, drove, and just jackhammered a left-handed dunk, which again, like, we just take for granted that Giannis is ambidextrous with his, just hammering dunks on dudes. But it ain't normal, people. Like, what he does with his right hand, what he does with his left hand, like, it's just not normal. So again, and 13 of 18. So just as usual, we're spoiled. Just the off the charts efficiency, with the exception of the 10-second count in the second half.
And then the lane violation afterward.
Yeah. It looked like he was kind of taking his time on the second one, almost like, I'm gonna take my time, guys. Like, You're not gonna speed me up, even though, let's be honest, Giannis, you should speed up.
The longest.
But at that point, it obviously the game was in reasonable shape. I think they were up like 16 or 18 points. So yeah, just a really kind of impressive all around game from Giannis. Had the big block early. He did have 2 big blocks in the Thursday game, which his stock numbers have been kind of trending downward over the course of the season. I think his injuries and kind of managing through that has been part of that. I don't think he's been as explosive defensively as he could be, or as he was early in the year, in part because of those injuries. But again, just good to see him looking more like himself on both ends. And I was shocked he only had 4 assists. It felt like he had like 7, 8 assists. But again, I wasn't watching the box score because I was kind of catching up. So,
and I think too, with the Bucks missing so many threes, it felt like he should have had more, because he was hitting guys and guys were getting open looks. They just weren't falling.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, it's like, offensively, it was a classic game. It was like Giannis just shows up, gets his 30 points. The 19 rebounds obviously were huge. You mentioned 8 offensive. Had almost as many offensive rebounds as the Thunder as a team. 36% rebound rate offensively for the Bucks tonight, which is a great number. And that's, one of the things that this Thunder team, as you mentioned, gives up, is they don't play with a lot of size. They came into the year saying, hey, we're going to play Chet Holmgren as a center. His first year in the NBA. He's obviously not a big, strong guy, but obviously it's worked really well for them. But as we saw tonight, there's trade-offs that go with that. And Chet obviously had a really tough time, 1 for 10.
Yeah.
And, I think on paper, probably a lot of people would have said like, oh, well, Brook Lopez, like, can you play Brook Lopez against, the spacing of Chet Holmgren, the way he likes to step out, and the way that Chet can manipulate, the pick and roll, and the way that you drop against the pick and roll. But, the Bucks I thought were great. I thought Beasley was really good defensively, playing most of the night. Dame had one really bad possession early in the game, kind of just let Shea go right past him and for a layup. But thereafter, as you said, the numbers on Shea, I mean, he's probably the most consistent. I think I saw some stats, somebody sort of tried to quantify consistency, the game to game consistency. And Shea's like the most consistent kind of night to night guy among the superstars, just in terms of he just gets you 30 points every night. Just every night. He's efficient. He got his 3 steals and a block tonight, had a nice block on Khris in the first half. But, to hold him to 12 points is, pretty outrageous in the grand scheme of, like, 2024 NBA basketball.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard to do that. So I think the Bucks, all the perimeter defenders deserve a ton of credit, but also just, to slow him down is obviously a team effort. And, if you weren't defending the rim and walling off the paint and protecting the rim the way the Bucks did, then you're not going to be able to do what they're able to do. So again, especially given the lack of size the Bucks have in the backcourt with their starters to do what they did, I thought was really impressive. And again, I think the thing with Dame has been how consistent can he be, and obviously, like, you love the fact that his quote unquote bad game comes in a laugher win like this.
Yep.
Because he has been, he came in on a nice run here of late, and they needed him to make big plays as he did in that Brooklyn game, hitting that huge shot late. And thankfully tonight they just didn't really need that from him. And again, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. Like, you wouldn't think that Dame having an off night as a scorer and Khris only scoring 11 points on 11 shots, like, you would think that would be like a really bad sign if you heard that in advance. But Giannis was Giannis, and you had other guys step up. And again, most importantly, the defense. And, we'll say this. I mean, the Thunder obviously shot very poorly from three, 10 of 43, but they also were very bad inside the arc. And I think that's where you give the Bucks a ton of credit. They got very little at the rim tonight, and 76 points per initial play in half court, which is, terrible if you're the Thunder, great if you're the Bucks. So yeah, I mean, this is the beauty of playing better defense, is you give yourself the degrees of freedom that, you don't need Dame uncorking, 30-foot step backs in crunch time and needing him to be, give you Dame time every night when you play defense like this. It just, again, gives you more flexibility. And, we should talk a little bit about the bench, because that was the other part that I thought was really impressive, looking at the plus minuses. Like, normally it's like, oh, the starters have to carry things and overcome the bench's issues, and the fact that the bench units have not been obviously very good all year. But tonight, pluses up and down the box score, Camille, which we love to see.
Even in garbage time, we got pluses across the board for the Bucks bench. But to your point, just to wrap up the Middleton Lillard part of it all, at halftime, they were 3 of 15 combined from the field. And to your point, the Bucks were up at 1. And I was like, okay, if this can turn a little bit in the second half and they keep playing defense the way they've been playing defense, the Bucks should be all right. But even I didn't see them putting their foot on the gas the way they did in the third and taking off that way. But for the poor shooting they had in the first half, Khris did go 3 of 4 in the second half. Dame also went 3 of 4 in the second half, which, again, only 4 shot attempts for each of them in the second half. They were doing other things, contribute to the game in other ways. Giannis was really carrying a load. And like you said, there were some key contributions from some other Bucks today that played, pluses up and down the lineup. So let's key in on a few of those guys after this. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And it's so dope because you don't have to really worry about battling against thousands of other players, which normally you're going to have some pros in there, some sharks, some people who do this professionally. With Prize Picks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 different player stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll in. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks even offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an insurance or injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Something else that was easy for the Bucks tonight was just the way that they were able to stay connected with one another, the way they were playing. The healthy starting 5 added Jay Crowder back to the bench. And looking at the game, Doc went 9 deep. There was no AJ Green available for the Bucks today. He was out with a non-COVID injury or illness, I should say. So off the bench, you had Jay, you had Bobby, you had PC, and you had Pat Bev. And all 4 of those guys had some big contributions to the game. Doc, after the game, mentioned again how important Pat Connaughton is to the team, mentioned that Pat knows when to cut and that his ability to read the dunker spot is super, super impressive, that he has cuts that can lead to other players scoring. Jay Crowder knocking down threes. He's up to shooting 39% from 3 in the month of March after shooting 24% from 3 in February. Bobby Portis, another big game. Again, the Thunder are small. This was going to be a game that was going to be conducive to big players. And Bobby Portis's play tonight was impressive. 7 to 13 from the field. Didn't knock down a 3, but he was able to use his size to influence the game. In addition to that, as I mentioned, you also had Pat Connaughton playing well, Bobby, Jay, Pat Bev. Didn't get on. He didn't knock down any field goals, but he had 2 blocks. He blocked 2 3-point shots tonight, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, just great defense. I mean, the Bucks got a lot from their bench tonight.
Yeah, and I mean this is the 9 guys that you certainly, I think, would expect, like, okay, that's probably your most likely 9-man rotation. You mentioned AJ Green not being available. Obviously, we've seen a lot of reasons from AJ why he has a really strong case to be part of a playoff rotation as well, or at least a regular season night-to-night rotation. So it's nice that Doc Rivers actually has, like, some options. And I think, you go up and down the lineup right now. The starters have been doing the work all year long. We didn't talk much about Brook Lopez. I thought starting the game with a pass, basically a set play that ends with Khris throwing it over top for Brook to get a layup, I thought was a really encouraging sign, because I think when the Bucks struggle offensively, they too often don't look for Brook Lopez or look for ways to get Brook involved in the paint around the basket, which doesn't just mean like straight post ups, but just using his size. Khris is, probably the best at, like kind of with Giannis, just running pick and rolls, finding ways to get him the ball around the basket. We saw a few more examples of that in this game where they just threw the ball over the top to him. And, he had a play in the third quarter as well when they were going on that run where he just basically ran in transition, basically ran to the rim and had an and one finish that was part of that big run they run on. But yeah, I think with the bench guys, fortunately Bobby has been obviously on a good run of late. I think Thursday, I think, was a struggle, if I remember correctly, for Bobby, but
Yeah,
at least for a while. But for him, again, just kind of like getting back to what he's been doing. And, I think with Bobby, here's the reality. I saw someone in my mentions earlier today talking about like, oh, Brook is cooked and all this stuff. And it's like the Bucks defense, when Brook is not on the floor this year, has been horrendous. Like Giannis and Bobby together came into this game with a 123 defensive rating. Okay. Like, not good, guys. And again, there's some bad luck in terms of 3-point shooting mixed in there as well. But I mean, Bobby and Giannis play a ton together, right? This isn't like a really small sample thing. So look, they're going to need to find ways to defend with smaller lineups in the playoffs. We've seen this every year, right? Brook has had a lot of really good playoff series, but we've seen it that, teams often like to close smaller, and you have to have smaller lineups that you can play with. And for various reasons, including the fact that Khris and Jay have missed so much time, we have not seen very much of Giannis as like a true 5 without Bobby or Brook out there. And so I think the Bucks are going to have to figure out some options like that. We've seen it work in previous years. They won a championship basically closing with Giannis at the 5 in all those close games against the Suns in 2021. But that said, when Brook is on the floor, I think they, were about like -11 points per 100 better. He's had the best defensive on-off all year, which, is in the league, which is nice for Brook Lopez, but doesn't speak well of what's been happening when he's off the floor. And there's no reason why the Bucks have to have that much. And look, I'm a huge Brook Lopez fan. There's no reason the Bucks have to be like complete garbage defensively when Brook is not on the floor. Like you got to figure something out, guys, right? Again, you have limitations defensively, but you have to be able to be better than what they've been. And I think things have been trending in a better direction. And I think, we saw it against the Celtics. They were able to string together good minutes defensively with Bobby out there, even without Giannis, which again, maybe is more smoke and mirrors and zone defense and things like that. Tonight, we didn't have to see that. But again, like being able to have the starting five be really effective and, actually didn't start the game that well, right? I think it was 17-9. Oklahoma City early, but the third quarter, the starters obviously did the business. And then the fact that Bobby, Jay, these guys can come in and you're not seeing a big drop off, right? Even when we saw lineups with Giannis and, Pat Connaughton bringing the ball up and probably doing way more ball handling than we all want Pat Connaughton doing. They were able to hold things together. Pat was plus 17, Bev was plus 12, Bobby plus 17, Jay plus 10, Jay 10 points on 4 of 4. Feeling some good Marquette vibes, Camille.
Let's go. Sweet 16.
Camille, very proud of her alma mater today.
Yes.
And overall, gotta say this is a great Sports Sunday. Bucks with a huge win. Marquette, fun win against Colorado, and also shout out to the U.S. men's national team playing Mexico tonight. They were up 2-0 in the 90th minute here a moment ago, and I checked last, so hopefully I didn't just jinx them. But yeah, fun Sports Sunday, and again, depth has been the challenge for the Bucks all year, right? Getting good minutes from groups that are not just the starting five, which has been great this year. So it's nice to see the starting five actually back together again. Like they've been plus 16 net rating for quite a while because Khris has been out and then Giannis was out, and we've been kind of having the seesawing thing. So very nice to have that group back together again and showing us in the third quarter what they could do. But again, not that you're going to go 9-10 man deep necessarily every game in the playoffs, but you're going to have to hold down the fort when your best players are on the bench in the playoffs. They can't all play 48 minutes. And so getting Jay, getting Bobby, Bev, and Pat to a point where they're integrating with the starters and playing off those guys and being productive and making plays. As you said, Jay Crowder actually seeing the ball go through the hoop over the past couple weeks has been a very nice change. Because I think, again, they're going to need those guys at some point in the playoffs. And, again, like the bar is going to be really high. Like we saw it, Boston maybe had their struggles with the Bucks last week, but that's an awesome team. And, you look at the 7, 8, 9, 10 teams in the East right now, like there's some serious banana peels to be found in that group with the likes of our old friends, the Heat, among others. So yeah, just now's a good time to start ramping up your play. We're getting towards the end of March. Obviously, health is the number one priority, but again, like if you're peaking in January, February, then maybe not ideal. But if you start to really find your rhythm, get healthy late March, early April, that feels like probably a pretty good time to be ramping up ahead of the playoffs.
Ramping up and getting healthy. Those are the two things I've wanted to see with this Bucks team heading into the playoffs, and we are seeing it. You did mention our old nemesis, the Heat. They did do us a solid. The Cavs have lost to the Heat in 2 of their last 3 games. The Cavs have lost to the Heat, then the Wolves, then the Heat again. And with that, and the Bucks winning 2 in a row, the Bucks are now 3 games up on the Cavs for second in the East with 11 games remaining. And Cleveland's only a half game up on the Knicks for that 3 spot right now. So there might be some movement in that 3-4 spot amongst those teams as well. The Cavs have lost 7 of their last 10, so they are going in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, the Bucks are starting to get into a little groove here. The Bucks are 11-4 since the All-Star break. They're now 46-25 on the season. And up next for the Milwaukee Bucks, they welcome the LA Lakers into Fiserv Forum on Tuesday. Should be a good game. Hopefully, we'll get to see a LeBron versus Giannis matchup. Always enjoy seeing the two of them compete against each other. So we'll be back with more Locked On Bucks on Tuesday, talking more about the Lakers game. And, of course, we'll be coming back at you guys as well with a post game after that Lakers game. So for Frank and myself, we'll wrap up here. Enjoy the win and go Marquette. Sweet 16. Got to get that in there for the one time. Have a good one, y'all.